Hey, I'm Clayton with Remax, and welcome to my April monthly marketing update. So as we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell so you get notifications every time we have another great video like this one come out. So let's get into it. First quarter's over, and here we are in April, and time has flown. Definitely a lot faster than in 2020 felt, right? Here we are looking at the snapshot of the year-over-year changes in Matrix. Now, something to remember is this time last year was when everything was getting locked down from the virus. So we see a massive skyrocket in our showings. So we're up 49.5%. That seems like it's through the roof, but again, remember, we started going to lockdown. A lot of people pulled out of the market because they were scared it was 2008 all over again, which it wasn't. So existing home sales are up, new home sales are up, which is not surprising. It has been a crazy year. There's actually more transactions happening, at least in my hyper-local area around Houston, than there was in 2020. And we also see that existing home sale inventory and new build inventory is low. Like, it is low. And we definitely need a lot more inventory. So one of the reasons for our low inventory is the fact that it's so cheap for buyers to get a loan, to get a mortgage. And here we are, we're seeing a lot of headlines come out. I'm sure you've seen them yourselves, and people are saying, oh, interest rates are on the rise. Oh no, are we in a housing bubble? And let's be honest, it's clickbait. That's what news companies do now, is they just look for clickbait. Yes, interest rates have gone up, but they're pretty much sitting where they were sitting this time last year, really February, March time frame. So we're still in the low threes. A lot of economists are coming out, and there's some that are thinking we're going to be in the 3.75% range at this, near the end of the year. But we also have a lot that think that we're going to stay in the low threes. So who knows where rates are going, but the general consensus is we're still going to be in the threes, which is definitely a lot better than back in like the 80s when it was 19%. George Rat2 had a great comment on this. He said, home sellers and home buyers have gotten really used to extremely low rates. Rates even in the 3 to the 3.4 remain extremely affordable by historic standards. So let's look at the year-over-year changes in listings. And this graph, it's wow, just looking at it. So our green line is actually showing us the amount of new listings coming in the market. You see that big drop right there? Well, we were on the rise, getting a lot of listings. The market was moving forward. Then the virus hit. Boom. People quit listing because, again, they thought it was 2008 all over again. People were worried about their jobs. They weren't leaving the house. So for a lot of people, it made sense. So we saw this massive drop in inventory. But as you look at the bottom part of the graph, where we're looking at the orange and then dropping into the red, it shows you that nationwide, we're down 52% of what we need inventory-wise. So that's our total listings. So as our green numbers start going up and we're getting more and more listings since our massive drop at the beginning of the virus, we're just going downhill as far as active listings and inventory in our market. Looking at the whole U.S. year-over-year changes in housing inventory, you can see we've got some states that are in pretty red areas, some that are in super dark areas. Texas, we're down 57.7, so we've got less inventory than the national average. You've got places like New York that are helping those numbers, making them look a little bit better because they're only down 12.4% or 12.6%. Dr. Lynn Fisher came out and said, housing prices nationwide recorded the largest annual quarterly increase in the history of the FHFA HPI. Low mortgage rates, pent-up demand from home buyers, and a limited housing supply propelled every region of the country to experience faster growth in 2020 compared to a year ago despite the pandemic. So here's another reason why we have this massive lack of inventory, because there are a lot of reasons. And I honestly believe this is one of the biggest factors we have out there. This is the single family home units completed. So this is what new builders are putting out into the US. So prior to the 2008 recession, you could see the red part of the graph, that's that time frame right before builders were pumping out houses. Over 1.5 million houses is what they were throwing out into the market. and that was increasing the inventory way too much. Now on the green side, you can see in the last 13 years, they have been below the last 50-year average on putting out houses. Now it's grown, but they have been way, way behind, and they aren't keeping up with the population growth, which is not a good thing. So we definitely need more inventory into the market, because you can't have that pre-existing home come on the market if people don't have anywhere to go. And there's a lot of millennials entering the market looking for that first-time home to purchase, usually 300s and below, at least depending on your area. That's for Houston. So they need those new builds. New builds really aren't at that price. There's some out in the outskirts, so they're looking at the pre-loved homes. But the guys that live in the pre-loved homes need to go buy something else. And that's where we're losing that inventory, is from the new builders. One question I'm getting quite a bit now is, are we seeing a cash out refinance crisis? So to figure that out, let's go look back in time, because history is always our key on what's going on today and what we expect to happen tomorrow. Never a crystal ball, but it's a really good guidance. Here we are looking at the home equity cash out by refinance in billions. So prior to the 2008 recession, we could see the highest peak being in 2006, where people pulled out $321 billion. That's what they pulled out. They refinanced, pull that money out of their house. And really, looking back at some of that research, people were spending that money on silly things, going to buy goat cars and jet skis and boats and travel trailers, things that really wouldn't bring any money back. So they're pulling out equity, spending it elsewhere. Now, when we look at today, here in, at least in 2020s, we don't have 2020 numbers yet, right? We've only had $153 billion pulled out. So yeah, it looks like we're on the growth for that cash out. But again, history's always key. So let's look at the tappable equity. So this research comes from Black Knight. So what is tappable equity? Well, it's the amount available for homeowners to access before hitting the 80% combined LTV, loan to value ratio. So for example, if your home is worth $100,000, you only owe $50,000 on it, you could pull all the way up to owing $80,000. So pull out $30,000 in cash and go spend that however you please. So we can see back in 2006, there was a lot of equity in the market that homeowners had in their property, but not as much as they have in 2020. And some of those factors, because of the lack of inventory, prices are just increasing. So that builds a lot of equity. But the average homeowner has been really smart on what they've been doing for their property, with their property. So the average homeowner has been a lot smarter with their equity. Instead of pulling it out, they've just been leaving it there. And as the prices continue to increase, that's why you see this big increase of tappable equity. So we see in 2006 that tappable equity was $4.6 trillion back in 2006, right? And in 2020, we're at 7.3. So we're almost doubled from back then. But yet the percentage of cash out refinances are more than halfway down from 2006. So we were at 89%, in 2020 we're at 33%. So this graph should easily kind of show you, even if you're not a numbers person, this probably makes a lot more sense, right? So take a peek at this, and this shows you it's nothing like 2006. The Wall Street Journal put out an article and said this: the residential real estate market is on its biggest tear since 2006, just before the housing bubble burst and set off a global recession. Yet, in every meaningful way, today's market is the inverse of the previous boom. In the mid-2000s, loose mortgage lending standards enabled borrowers with poor credit histories to purchase homes beyond their means, sometimes with mortgages that required low payments in the early years of the loan. So that's another big difference between then and now. Now, it's really affordable for a buyer to purchase a home, but the lending standards are much, much tighter. They're asking for a lot more information. Back in 2006, you could almost just say, hey, this is how much I make. Lender says, okay, this is how much you could afford. Go for it. Here's your loan. Here's your house. Good luck. Where in today's standards, that's not happening at all. It's much, much harder. And if you've purchased a house anytime recently, you know they ask for a ton of documents. They almost want your left hand, your firstborn. NAR even came out and said, with the demand of homes outpacing new listings, buyer competition continues to intensify. On average, there were 4 offers per home sold in February, according to NAR's latest February Realtors Confidence Index report, a monthly survey of realtors about their transactions. 1 year ago, there were 2 to 3 buyers for every home sold. The intense competition has led to double-digit price growth and home selling in record time. To get back to a healthy supply equivalent to 6 months of monthly demand, an additional 2.7 million homes should be brought to the market for sale. Which 2.7 million, that's a crazy amount of homes that need to come on the market just to get us to a neutral market. That doesn't even take us to a buyer's market, just a neutral market. To kind of put it in graph form, just so it makes a little bit more sense for some of y'all, you can see the amount of offers coming on properties is just going sky high, which is one reason for the prices of homes being driven up. Again, can't keep up with the population, therefore there's more demand. Supply and demand, right? Is this like the last time? Well, let's break it down because history is always key. So let's start out with the annual home price appreciation. When we look prior to that 2006, when everybody was pulling out equity and right before we got into the recession, we could see average annual appreciation was 10.3%. And in today's market, we're at 6.3%. So, and I know what some of you are thinking. You're like, Clayton, look, we're just in the beginning of that bubble. So we're just back at 2002. Well, we'll get into that. Here's the default risk in the mortgage market. So as you can see in the years going up to the recession, there was a lot of product risk. And that was because the mortgage lending side was so loose that a lot of people were getting foreclosed on. They were buying houses that honestly, they had no business in buying. And as the years have gone on, you can see they've gotten a lot smarter. They've made everything a lot tighter. So the risk has gone down over the years. And borrowers' risk have gone down over the years because it is much more affordable today to purchase a home than it was in the past. And this is the main reason why I don't think we're in the beginning stages of what we saw before 2008. So here's the monthly inventory of homes for sale prior and now. And because builders were pumping out houses like crazy, we actually had a growth in inventory year over year. And then with the loose mortgage lending, it was very easy to buy a house, even though, again, you shouldn't have. It was an artificial market. So properties were selling for way too high. People were coming in and paying $50,000 over list price and going, hey, don't worry, in a month, it's going to be worth $50,000 more. And because of all of that, we had a growth of supply, and that's what led to that crash. Where in today's market, we don't have an artificial market. We're actually losing inventory. So this is what's showing you that we have a supply and demand issue, a massive supply and demand issue. The deputy chief economist over at First American said, it's not just a seller's market, it's a super seller's market. This is an incredibly competitive home buying environment. And because of that, the American home equity skyrockets. We have over $26,000 average gain in equity. We have $204,000 of current average equity of mortgaged homes. And 38.2% of homes are owned free and clear. So that brings us to 16.2% increase in equity, totaling over $1.5 trillion. So as we look at the year-over-year change in equity, you could see it by state, and no states are going down. Texas, more of my hyper-local area, the equity has grown in the last year by $12,000. And then you've got crazy states like California that are $55,000. So this is where a lot of that equity is coming from, which increases that tappable equity. So I want to end this month's episode with an analogy. Imagine a situation where we're trying to fill up a bathtub, but the drain is open and the faucet is on. Think of the faucet as the flow of listings coming into the market, and the drain at the bottom is the sales that are going out. And at any point, we take a measurement of how much water is in that bathtub, and at that point, that is how much inventory we currently have in the market. So what happens in the housing market is we have the faucet on and we have the drain open at the bottom. And once a month we go in and we measure how much water is in our bathtub. So now keeping this analogy going, the less open that our drain is at the bottom and the more open our faucet is on top, the more water we'll have at that measuring point. Turn it the other way around. If our faucet is barely going and our drain is fully open, then the water level goes down and we have less inventory. And so these are the dynamics at play today. The inventory measure as it's measured today is only at a certain period of time. So what's missing today is the water we haven't even seen that's gone into the tub and straight out. And so we look at measures like days on market to see how fast it's going or the velocity of that water inventory. And what's happening in our today's market is we have 21 days on market. So a lot of homes are flowing into our tub and out before we even get a chance to measure them. So we've got really low interest rates. Even though they're on the rise, they're still really low. Affordability is the lowest it's ever been almost for buyers. And then we also have that lack of inventory because builders have not kept up with the population growth. So it's nothing like 2008 and prior where there was a manufactured demand. Today it's a real supply and demand issue. So smash that like button if you learn anything new. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you're seeing in the market and what's keeping you out of buying or selling a home today, or maybe why you're jumping into it. Also, hit that little bell there on the side so you get notifications every time we have another amazing video like this one. I'll see you on the next one.